Hi, this talk is generally about how to undertake group work. It's about making the most of it, getting the best out of working with other people. And let's be honest, as you finish up at GCU and you move into your working environment, so much of your time is going to be working with other people. So perhaps some of the things you learn in this talk, yeah, absolutely may be useful for the level one principle of markings group work for the presentation, but generally it's going to be helpful, I think, just going forward. So these are the main things that we're going to cover today. The first thing is obviously getting the right start. Second thing is your meetings and how you're going to control them. Who's going to take a leading role? And with any group situation, at times there may be issues that you have to address when you work with other people. So we'll be looking at them as well. I think there are three key things that you want to put in place as early as possible. One is to absolutely bring a structure to your group by setting up a timetable for completing a task that you've been given. This is really important. And the other thing is when you've got this timetable, when you're going to do things, and then the deadlines as part of it, don't just have a deadline for when you're going to present. Try and incorporate interim deadlines for various stages. So you might have a when's everybody going to have their bit written, and then you're going to move on and say, right, when are we going to start creating the slides? When are we going to rehearse before we do it? So there's lots of other little deadlines that you can put in, which are also very helpful. Because as I say, it's really good at giving structure, and also letting everybody know what they're supposed to be doing and when they're doing it for, because one of the biggest things that can go wrong is with group work is not being sure. People not being sure of who's doing what and when they're doing it for. That's the basis of so many things not going to plan. I say face-to-face meetings here. Obviously, that could be a Zoom meeting, but meetings when you're actually talking to each other are really, really important. They cannot be replaced by by just email. A WhatsApp group may be quite useful, but actually, a Zoom meeting where you actually kind of see an eye to eye or whatever, really crucial because you can accomplish so much. You can read other people's body language. You can see how people are getting on. Somebody could maybe send you an email, and you might get the sense that everything's okay. But when you're seeing people, there may be clues about how they're feeling, etc., which you can then ask about or explore or offer support or whatever it is. So there's a, if you're all in a room together, you can pick up on things which may be useful or may be helpful. I think that's important. Email, however, is extremely important for letting everybody know what's going on. So if somebody is not able to attend a meeting, or somebody is not not taking part in the group as much as they could be, at least at the very minimum, you can continually email and keep them up to date so that you know that they know what's going on, and that may be very useful or very helpful to them. So by putting these things in place, you're getting the right start. So let's look a bit more detail at these meetings I was talking about. What I honestly feel, one important thing I think is you need to understand that you have to get consensus, that the group has to be pulling in the one direction. And that means everybody is fully supporting what's going on. And also it means that you allow people, you be very open and allow people in the group to speak up and say, make suggestions. I think a group should be a place that is very safe, very open, where somebody can speak up without fear of being ridiculed or put down or dismissed until they've been heard. And then, then you can discuss anything. But it should be a safe place for people to feel that they can speak up. Nothing will, if you drive people underground or you take people out of the equation, then you possibly could be storing up issues for later on. But always encouraging people to speak up and say their piece is very useful. Okay. Consensus is very much continually, to know you have consensus is continually asking people, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Does anybody have anything to say? Are we agreed? And that's when people may speak up. And then you can bring out anything, any issues or anybody thinking differently can say something at that point. And you'll know you'll keep consensus. And if it's something and you can talk through it, then you will maintain that consensus. And consensus may also mean that you have to compromise. So not everybody can get their way. That's the whole thing about working in a group. At some point a decision has to be made, or choices will have to be made. But hopefully when you're compromising, you're doing so to keep things moving and to keep the consensus. It's important for everybody in the group to recognize that there might not be a specific way that everything has to be done, the ultimate correct way that everything has to be done. So therefore, sometimes if a decision had to be made, it's a choice. And some people can maybe see that, and some people can give up their side and let something else happen. So you compromise. You can say, in the scheme of things, it doesn't matter if it's done this way or done that way. So yeah, we'll do it that way. That's okay. So you may give up something to compromise. If you feel it's important or you feel you have reasons, then hopefully everybody's going to listen to you as you put those forward and say, I think it should be done for this way because of this, this, and this. And then anybody who's got a counterpoint can come forward and say, well, maybe it's this, and you can discuss it and try and reason it out. And hopefully at that point, whoever compromises or says, let's do it this way, or that's fair enough, let's do it that way, they're doing so willingly, so that you have everybody going in the same direction because we have consensus, everybody's agreed. If you've been able to get that consensus, compromise, and everybody's in the same, then make sure you're recording it Um, the important thing for me is for any meeting that you kind of get some kind of notes of what's been agreed at the meeting. And very importantly, actions. What actions which, when it comes to meetings, what are people doing as a result of that meeting? It was working at GCU and attending meetings that really brought it home to me that the most important thing from a meeting is what actions do I have as a result of that meeting? What do I have to do and when do I have to do it? And I always try to make sure that I have that when I'm leaving a meeting. And you should do the same. Everybody should know what they're doing and when they're doing it for. Because that's incredibly important, because it's going to prevent issues later on for reasons that I will explain. But make sure you're recording what's going on and then communicating it with everybody. So not only do you take notes on a meeting, but you try and make some kind of communication so that everybody's got it in a written form, what they're doing and when they're doing it for. Don't trust to telling someone and leaving it at that. Lay everything down, take notes, communicate the notes, and then there's no dubiety, no doubt. This is what people need to do, and then this is what they need to do, and get everybody to agree. And then you have something which is solid and structured that everybody can work to. I briefly want to discuss leadership styles, and I have one exaggerated leadership style, two extremes of leadership style. On the one hand, at the one side we have, on the left hand we've got Mahatma Gandhi, whose basic leadership style was that if you are sympathetic to what he's doing, you should be able to work with him. He says, I really believe in this, and if you believe in it too, then why not help me? Why not follow me? Which seems fair. And then on the right, in fact on the far right, we have Benito Mussolini, who was a fascist dictator from the 30s and 40s in Italy, and his leadership style was do what I say because I'm in charge, and he brutally crushed any opposition to his way of doing things. And there is an argument that he got things done, but it was flawed, and in the end up it all went horribly wrong. Whereas, with Mahatma Gandhi, there was more progress and more things were left in place because of the way he went about it. And what I would suggest is that if you are in a leading role, then you're doing it because you have something to offer. Don't just take the leading role because you want to be in charge. Take the leading role because you are the most appropriate person at that time. And the other thing I'm kind of inferring here is that rather than a group having a leader, there is the opportunity for somebody to take up the role, the leading role, at a certain point in time because they're the most appropriate person to do it. And then if what the group is going through changes and somebody else more appropriate should kind of come to the fore then and take a leading role, then they could come forward and do that. So it's not necessarily that you need a leader all the time, but at certain points people will come to the fore and say, well, I'm perhaps best equipped for this, to do this, or I'm best equipped to do that. and then they can maybe step back when that's over and support. And if you're not in a leading role, then it's up to you to try and support whoever's taking the leading role to help them get it done. That's a kind of a natural way. It lends to the group's strengths, and it also reflects on the fact that any group has multiple talents, multiple people, multiple talents, which is part of the benefits or the positive nature of groups is you have a talent pool within it. So encouraging people to take leading roles because they're best at that point buys into that or acknowledges that talent pool that you have. So try and think along those lines. Not necessarily your group needs a de facto leader, but it needs people who are best equipped at that time to take the leading role. And, just always ask yourself, am I the most appropriate person to take charge at this point? Now, I just want to talk about some of the common group issues that I feel come up more than others. And here they are. They are when you have somebody in the group who is more independent thinking, and that can be construed as being a dissenting voice, being a disruptive voice. But that if these people, if somebody thinks differently or makes suggestions, they should always be listened to. That's a very important thing. If you have an independent thinker in your group and they have ideas, it's really important that you try to work with them, listen to them, because you never know. Sometimes things that come out of left field can actually be quite useful or quite good. And it's not maybe, it is something to be listened to, or it could be. But the worst thing you could do is to not allow them to say their piece, not allow them, not to include them, because that's the kind of thing that will build up resentment. And then you'll lose your consensus. Your group is no longer one going in one direction because somebody may be holding some resentment. Whereas, hopefully, if everybody is listened to and reasoned with, either the point is taken and they're on board because their points have been taken, or at least they understand why their point has not been taken, but they're still on board because the group welcomes it and the group appreciates what's going on or what's been attempted. The other really big thing which can cause group issues is misunderstandings about responsibilities. And that is usually summed up by the phrase, I thought you were doing that. No, I thought you were doing that. No, I thought you were doing that. And the things I've said before about communication, about notes, about meetings, about emails, should absolutely reduce the chances that someone doesn't know what's supposed to be happening when. And that is exactly how you reduce that or eliminate it, by making sure that everybody knows when they're doing it and when, and maybe perhaps somebody checking up every now and again. And if you are following up, if somebody's due to have something in or somebody is late, don't go in saying, where is it, we need it now, etc. But perhaps you could ask them, is everything all right? Is there anything you can help us with? That you consistently, someone tells the group that if anyone is having issues, don't worry about it. Just come forward, we'll all chip in and we'll all try and get it sorted. So be open, be inclusive. And then there's less liable to be, when there are misunderstandings, then the point is to try and see how that can be fixed and rectified. Certainly it's not the time to apportion blame. It's just, let's move on, let's get this right. And finally, of course, you will get personality clashes where people, for whatever reason, as I say, it's just, different styles of working. Some people want everything in place weeks before the deadline. Other people kind of work last minute, and that can cause clashes where where somebody knows they'll get it done, but they're going to be last minute, and other people are anxious about that because they tend to, quite rightly, for the best of reasons, they want to get things finished early. The important thing about personality clashes, the biggest thing that can help with that, is maturity. Maturity in a person will allow them to go above the issue and certainly not to see the issue as personal. So often people make things personal rather than taking the issue at hand. The issue is getting your work finished. It's not about the person, it's about the completion of the work. If you personalize problems, then it will make things worse. Whereas if you are mature, see it's the issue, but can still keep talking to the person and keep the communication open, then things will continue to happen. Because again, as I say, it's when communication stops or slows down, the problems escalate. If you can keep talking to each other, keep moving towards the goal, then you have a far better chance of everything getting complete. And it takes a mature person to not get personal about it and just say, look, let's get this issue fixed. Just look at this. I'm not upset at you. It's just this thing. How can we address this? How are you? Okay. So, if you do have these issues, if they haven't been avoided and they happen, it's really important to tackle them as early as possible and not let things deteriorate or become worse. That becomes really important. And I've given you many ways previously of how you may tackle them. Get people involved. Open up discussion with people. See if there's any issue that they can be supported with or helped with. And see if you can work it out. And the important thing is always to resolve it in the group before making any approach to staff. So, can you fix it in the group? Is there anything you can do to sort it in the group? And the other thing is that if you are going to escalate it and approach staff, then you have to keep everybody involved and let them know what's happening. So if you're having a problem with the group, if you're one person having a problem with the rest of the group or an issue with the rest of the group, then you should approach the group and say, these are the reasons I'm not happy. Is there anything we can do about it? This is what the issue is, I believe. And if there's no agreement, you say, well, at this point, I'm going to have to go and tell somebody about it. I'm going to have to inform staff. And the same again, if you are a group, if the majority of the group have an issue with one person in the group, then it's absolutely that everybody in the group or the group as a whole inform the person what the issues are. Try and find a solution. Try and involve them, but also say at this point they feel they have no alternative but to perhaps talk to a member of staff because they've tried things. You can't go directly staff and not let the person know about it. I think that's really, really important. Yeah, and then approach the staff and see if they can help sort things out. And that's, but the main thing with that is absolutely that you try to sort it out. And so often there are ways to do it. The other thing is, of course, that if you have emails and you have a paper trail, then what has happened will be more obvious because people have been told what they're supposed to be doing and when they're supposed to be doing for it, and it'll be easier for staff to work out what's going on rather than it being some word against somebody else's word. If you have a paper trail, if you have emails, if you have documents, minutes from meetings, then it'll be easier for staff to work out what's going to happen, what's happening, and what's gone wrong. So, just to kind of briefly summarize what we've gone through here. One, if you get the right start and put the right things in place, your group has a much better chance of being successful. And that's getting a consensus, having deadlines, and making sure everybody knows what they're doing. Meetings are really, really important, as face-to-face as possible. If not in person, then by Zoom, something like that, where you're actually talking and looking and discussing with people, and kind of where you can read their body language and stuff, and you might get a sense of how things are going. Think about taking a leading role rather than being a leader. Try to think of people in the group taking or coming to the fore because they're the most appropriate person to do that. If all of the things that I've mentioned don't deal with any issues that may arrive, then talk to the person involved, be open and honest, let them know what you feel's gone wrong and what's happening, and if need be, then at some point you may have to go and speak to some staff members. Very best of luck with your group work when it starts.